chapter. Please stand as you are able for the reading of the gospel. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to a meal on the Sabbath day, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by the host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, "Give this person your place." And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who are humbled will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors in case they invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. And you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." One of the dinner guests, on hearing this, said to him, "Blessed is the one who will eat bread in the kingdom of God." Then Jesus said to him, "Someone gave a dinner and invited many. At the time for the dinner, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is ready now.' But they all alike began to give excuses. The first said to him, 'I have bought a piece of land and I must go and see to it. Please accept my regrets.' Another said, 'I have bought 5 yoke of oxen and I am going to try them out. Please accept my regrets.' Another said, 'I have just been married and therefore cannot come.' So the slave returned and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his slave, 'Go out at once into the streets, the lanes of the town, and bring the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' And the slave said, 'Sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room.' Then the master said to the slave, 'Go out into the roads, the lanes, and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who were invited will taste my dinner.'" This is the wisdom of God. The first time I went to Japan, I was an exchange student. I lived with a Japanese family, and I spent most of my time with other exchange students, going all over Tokyo, feeling like we were free as ever, no boundaries but one: the Japanese mother, and it was formidable. The second time I went to teach in an agricultural college in Hokkaido, and this time I was part of the Japanese system, and there were boundaries everywhere. There are 2 ways to go to Japan, and I think this is true of any other foreign country. On the one way, you're on the outside looking in like you are a tourist. You can even live there but not participate. The second way is to be part of the very system that you are in, working for a Japanese company, speaking Japanese. I remember when I first went to Hokkaido for the banquet for the beginning of the year for Rakuno Gakuen Daigaku. That's where I was teaching. In a hotel in Sapporo. The tables were all in a big circle, like this. So everybody could be facing each other, but most of all, they were facing the front, where there was the president, the department heads, the deans, and of course the founder who gave a speech. I was given a seat in the back of the circle, briefly introduced. Most of the time, we were listening to the people at the head. This was not a question and answer session. It was stratified, and we were listening to speeches. It was orderly. And then at the very end, they all said, Gaku no Gakuen, Banzai! Oh my God, I was in a foreign country. Of course, when I heard that, I wouldn't know what was going on, so I started kind of doing this, feeling a little strange. It's because I didn't know what was going on, also because I grew up Presbyterian. Japanese society is highly stratified. When you go to the school, they have senpai and kohai. You have seniors and those who are under. It could be that you are just 1 year apart in the school, but you are superior. And they have to defer. This is true in baseball, too. In baseball, you have the senior player and the younger player, which really means that no matter how uppity Julio Rodriguez gets, he would still have to defer to the players who've been there longer. Okay, Ichiro, whatever you say, Ichiro. Did anybody see that last night? It was great. Jesus asks, where am I? I'm on the wrong page. That's why I'm having trouble. So I thought, what would a banquet like this be like in America? And I've been to a number of banquets, and usually the tables are all set around, various parts of the room. There is a head table, particularly if there's a guest, but people are talking all over the place amongst each other, and there's a sense of freedom, some equality. The banquet comes to express our values. Hypothetically, and I think a bit sarcastically, I tried to imagine what would happen to an American banquet if it started to devolve. It would become chaos and competition. There would be wrestling over attention, people talking over each other, looking up to the head table, wanting to be there, illicit comments, deception and dismissal. Look at me! It's kind of what's happening in our country right now, isn't it? Uncharacteristically to me, and still a mystery, some Americans seem to want to get rid of any chaos at all and have an authoritarian model. Then you only have to listen to one person all the time, and there's only one boundary. What is it? Loyalty. Jesus is asked by the Pharisee 3 times in Luke to come to his house. And in each instance, chaos ensues. It was a banquet much more like the Japanese, highly stratified. There were places where people were supposed to sit. It was hierarchical. And what the Pharisees wanted is to find a place in all of that to place him. Once they could place him in this stratification, they could control him. And he would have none of it. No, Jesus was there to challenge the hierarchical system itself. Actually, Luke combines 2 stories here. There are 2 different banquet stories, if you heard that. The first one is from Luke only, and it stresses humility, where we have the famous adage, for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. It closes with the suggestion to invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the lame. We have to remember here, these are examples. It's not like if you're deaf, you're not on the list, so you don't count, right? All sorts of people are to be fit into this. The traumatized, the working poor, anybody depressed, all are part of this. One can see where this is going. Jesus is challenging the structure of the table itself. The second parable is recorded also in Matthew, and in that one, Jesus responds to a person in the crowd who says, "Oh, how fortunate is one who gets to eat dinner in the kingdom of God," thinking it is going to be himself. "Oh, lucky me, I'm going to be in the kingdom." And this, Jesus then gives this rebuke. It says this parable. Person went out, invited all the people he could know, friends and everything, and nobody came. And again, invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. Jesus was always about the heart, particularly a humble heart, illustrated by sitting in the back row. We then are also challenged to consider how people relate in our society that is also stratified. Are leaders humble? What does our banquet look like in America? In America, we're not stratified like a caste system in a formal way. We're not an honor and shame culture, but we are stratified. Primarily, we're stratified by capitalism. There's a lot being said today about democracy, how we preserve it. Indeed, we need to preserve it. But we have to understand that democracy and capitalism are often working against each other. The core values are different. In democracy, we want for people to be equal and for power to rest in the people. In capitalism, it is designed to accumulate wealth for individuals, and that means eventually individuals at the top. I see this stratification when I've been out house hunting. There are levels of people who are housed in America. It's decidedly not democratic. At the bottom, the homeless. Did you know capitalism needs for people to be unemployed to work? It's almost like we need people to be homeless. Next, the working poor, the couch surfers. People working at McDonald's and nonprofits who share apartments and move a lot. I know a lot of these people. Third are the renters. Many subgroups here, many kinds of rentals. And simply by virtue of renting, one does not have control of one's housing. Did you read an article recently in the Seattle Times about raising rents in Seattle? People are getting evicted just because their rents have been raised. Then there's the manufactured home, the mobile home crowd. They're in the middle. Did you know this was all started by Warren Buffett? Thankfully, it wasn't Elon Musk. It would have been much worse. One buys a manufactured home, I figured this out, but then one's paying rent on the land, therefore one is still renting, and it can be raised at any time. Home ownership, the next level, is the ideal of the land. No rising rents, right? Freedom to do whatever one wants to do with one's property. But what about the HOAs? A little bit of socialism. In Fairwood, we had an HOA, $30 a month. I was looking around in most places I find, you know what the HOAs are around here? Anybody know? $500 a month. Who needs rent? And they can go up too. There are many sizes of homes, houses to buy. I was looking around and I figured out that anything in this area under $300,000 is likely to be a fixer-upper. It says things like, bring your tool belt and make this house shine again. So why should the poor people have to fix it? I am no fixer-upper. 300 to 400 level could get you into a sketchy neighborhood. Around Casino Road, maybe. Living in Anacortes, we went back through Mount Vernon all the time to go south, you know. I never knew the downtown stretch south like it did. So there was a house there, went to look at it. This is the neighborhood where Friendship House is, where the homeless are, where there's a little more crime, right? Only grocery store is way up north. You have to go all this way to get there. Yes. Far cry from being up on the hill in Mount Vernon, where the lowest house is $425,000. Now, up on the hill is Middle America. Nice neighborhoods, Everything's attractive. It's the place we want to go. 500 to 1 million is the beginning of the wealthy. Every time I see this sign going down Seattle Hill Road, where those 4 or 5, 6, 8 houses were built right in there. You know, we used to have nice little ramblers. 2 ramblers became 8 houses that begin at 2 million. 2 million, it's on the sign. Every time when I see that. See, when I grew up, one of the dreams we all had is to be a millionaire. And I couldn't buy that home. That's stratification. When I go on Zillow, I put a maximum of $450,000, and the minute I do that, all the dots go, Phoot! It tells me about where I land in society, anyway. We live in a stratified society. What would Jesus say to us? Sell your house and give all the money to the poor. Take that, you biblical literalists. I don't think they're going to do that. If Jesus observed our housing system, what would he say? There are 2 factors in transformation. One is the internal transformation, and here this is represented by the heart. And do we have a humble heart? And the other is action. What do we do? Who are we living with? Where is our place in society? The first house I grew up in had 1 bathroom. I shared a room with my brother. My sister's room was actually a converted walk-in closet. And I loved that house. I would buy it if I could. I didn't think any different at that time that we were in different communities. We were all the same. The houses on Witham Hill, yeah, they were bigger, but not so much that I felt like I was in a different place than they were. Something's changed in America. Now we have gated communities, which is an oxymoron. Can't put a gate around a community. What would Jesus say to us? As I said in one of my emails, I do believe that whatever we do, whatever we create, whatever we buy, we must consult and include our values and own the values that we are using to do what we do. Buy a house with humility. Buy a house with the larger community in mind. Live our values. There are 2 ways that one can enter the foreign country that we call the kingdom of God. One can be on the outside like a tourist, checking the values once in a while to see how they're doing, or maybe just to see how to get away with things. Or we can become part of the program, a person in the kingdom, and live the values that we claim with humility and grace, even if it's a fixer-up.